I saw a piece from Dan Rather. You remember that reputable CBS reporter?
Yes.
He actually had a piece from 42 years ago, and he was proclaiming at that point that scientists have confirmed global warming. And he showed a map of Florida and that the sea rise was so incredible that Florida would be 25% gone. Well, that was 42 years ago, and Florida hasn't changed at all.
Welcome to Hot Takes, brought to you by 50cupstea.com, where united we sip, discuss, and learn. Join us as we dive into the hottest takes on culture, business trends, and the threads that bind us. Get ready for inspiring stories, candid conversations, and a fresh perspective on living a healthy, fulfilled life. Grab your cup and tune in. Let's get started.
This is the 50 Cups podcast with best-selling author and a very successful entrepreneur, Jim Baker. And Jim, it's great to see you again.
Yeah, you as well. How you been?
I'm doing well. And you know what? I'm not a tea guy, right? I'm not.
Trying to get you there.
Well, I'm telling you, I'm loving this stuff. Now, last week we talked a little, well, let's first fill people in. You're also an owner of many companies, but the one that is the 50 Cup tea company.
Yes, 50cupstea.com. We are a wholesale and direct-to-consumer online tea business. And our whole goal is to unite all of us around health and around tea. Tea is the number 2 drink in the world. Obviously, we all live every day, hopefully praying and maintaining our health so we don't die. And I think that unites us all. And our motto is United We Sip. And today, Bill, I have a little immune booster tea. Not that this is the cold and virus season, but I thought I'd just give you a little sample. The tea we had last podcast was the refresher and the detox tea.
Yes.
But I really like this. This has a nice minty, fresh flavor. It's kind of cool this time of year. I mean, it's 91 degrees outside today, and got a little flavor to it.
That's good.
So
that is really
thought
good.
we would sample that today. And of course, you can always buy it online at 50cupstea.com. And if you spend over $40, we'll give you free shipping. So
nice.
That's my little plug for today.
Well, you know, we were talking before, and we'll get into your hot takes, and that was how more and more people are really becoming aware of the fact that all these herbs and teas and supplements can really make a difference in the body. So when it comes to the teas, I know that's kind of one of your goals. It's always been, let's make you healthy through, in this case, tea. And it works.
It does. I mean, there's a lot of organics. These are organic teas, by the way, so they're clean.
Yeah.
And on top of that, you know, based on the different types of tea, I mean, there's flavonoids and polyphenols and other things that are there that have been known, you know, to be very health beneficial to the body. And as we all know, when you get sick, especially when you're a kid, what did your mom do? She made you a cup of tea, you know, and there's a reason why she did that.
What I like about your tea is the tea that my wife gives me when I'm sick. Tastes like medicine. This doesn't. This is very enjoyable to drink. Let's talk about your hot takes. There's one on your list. I still don't know where you're going with this, actually, and that is waiting for the check. There's lots of people waiting for checks. I'm not sure which one you're waiting for.
Yeah, so I don't know if you've been to a restaurant.
Oh, yeah.
In the past, I'm sure everybody has. And, you know, you sit down within a normal period of time, you know, the server will come over and ask you if you want a drink, and you'll order the drink, and then he or she will come back with the drink, and then you'll order off the menu, and then your food comes in within a reasonable 10, 15-minute time frame. You have a nice meal. Usually the servers come into you, you know, 4 or 5 times while you're eating to either refill your drinks or to ask if you need anything else. I'm sure the boss is telling them to continue to ask because they want to upsell you. You know, want dessert, for example, appetizers, so on and so forth. And you're going through this thing, and in your mind, you know, you're thinking, well, it's been close to an hour, and we're kind of done, and now it comes time for the check. And suddenly the server disappears, and you're kind of giving it 5 minutes, maybe 10 minutes. You're kind of looking around, and then suddenly you're looking for that person and don't seem to be anywhere, or they're running around like they're chicken with their head cut off, but they're not coming back to you. And thinking to myself as a business owner, you know, the most important thing after the introduction of the customer is to close the customer, which
Get them out.
as a restaurant, right? You want to move the table,
Yes.
and you want to get the cash, right?
Yes.
You want to get the payment.
Absolutely.
And that's sometimes you experience in that in the U.S. If you're in Europe, for example, it's go through that same process, but then it's customary. They're not going to come up and give you the check. You have to ask for it.
Oh,
And it's totally normal to ask for it. And I remember I was in New York once a few years ago, and when you have adult kids, they're the experts in how you conduct yourself in society suddenly. And we're at this Brooklyn pizza place where you're sitting on picnic tables in a tent in December, so it's a little chilly outside, but you're supposed to be honored that you're there as opposed to the other way around.
I'm picking up a little sarcasm, folks. Continue, though.
And same thing happened, right?
Yes.
So, when there's only 4 or 5 of us, and we're going through the whole night, and everything's great, and then boom, gone. And
now you're freezing to death.
And it's a half an hour later,
Yeah.
right? And so finally, I did the old, wave my hand and motion over, and
Yes.
my daughter is like, "Dad, what are you doing?" Like, I'm getting the server, and that's rude. That's ridiculous. They're not going
How
to respond that way to you in New York. I said, I don't care. I need the check. If they want to get paid and she wants to get tipped, got to be able to make the payment, right?
Yes.
So
What do you
thankfully,
suppose that is? Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to interrupt.
no. So thankfully, the server did come over, and eventually we were able to close out the tab and move on.
One of my first jobs in the restaurant, I know that the waitresses, the tips, and you got to turn those booths and tables over as fast as you possibly can. So what's changed, do you suppose?
I don't know. Maybe they don't have enough server help, so when it gets busier, that person kind of disappears. Could just be pure. Well, I've done the bulk of my work. Maybe I need a break. Maybe they went outside, to hang out for a while.
Maybe so.
I don't know. That's the problem. That's why it's kind of a hot take of mine. It's just it's frustrating because I was in the retail business. Now, granted, we didn't have table service. We just had counter service. So you paid at the point of sale, basically. And,
Right.
But I mean, first and foremost, before you even start making a drink, you want to make sure you got the money. And so I don't know. I don't know. Lack of management. I don't know what it is. It's frustrating. And then they expect the other hot take is this tipping society that we're in at this point in time.
Well, what do you tip, if I may ask? and do you grade it based on the service you receive?
If the server is phenomenally good,
Uh-huh.
so just getting the meals out on time and all that good stuff, and then they don't drive me nuts by coming by every 5 seconds, but they have a way about them. They're somewhat personal. Like, I don't need to know about your life story and vice versa. They don't need to ask me about mine, but they just kind of get the whole thing. Then, yeah, I'll go 20, 25, maybe 30%.
Sure.
If you're just doing your job, then it's 15. If you're going to make me wait for the check, I'll probably still give you 15, but it's frustrating, at that point.
It is. I've gotten to the point, and I know exactly what you're talking about, that I will ask for the check when they bring the food. When you get a chance, could you give me the check? Because otherwise you're sitting there and you want to leave and you can't.
Right.
So I don't know. But is that a bigger statement for the overall service we seem to be receiving today? Is that just one of the symptoms of...
Yeah, it could be. I mean, I think COVID kind of, obviously blew out the service industry for a while,
Yeah, it
and
did.
it's coming back. I do know that from my perspective, at times it was difficult to bring in employees, and I'm sure other restaurants have had that problem. And I don't know about you, but sometimes you walk into a restaurant and half the restaurant's empty.
Yes.
And they tell you got a 45-minute wait.
Yes.
And you're looking around, it's a ghost town, but they don't have enough servers. So they say. But getting back to this tip thing, I mean, even counter service now, they have electronic point of sale systems, POS, and you're expected to tip when you're doing all the work. They flip that thing
yes.
around and
Yes.
it's staring at you in the face where it's 10, 20, 30% or custom tip. And that person's looking at the screen on the other end to see what you're going to do, right? And so suddenly, you're spending an extra $2 or $3, at a point of sale because you're tipping somebody for pretty much doing nothing.
I saw a meme where I don't tip if I have to stand and order. This was one of them. That's crazy. Oh, I noticed this, that I tip generously, especially where I live. There aren't many restaurants. And I always thought, Jim, that they got to know my name and my usual because I was just a good customer and a good-looking kind of guy. I got the sense now, Jim, that it may have something to do with tipping. Have you noticed that as well? In a sense, I mean, you go out a lot, right? You go out to restaurants. If you tip well, aren't you treated differently than someone who isn't?
If they know you.
Yes.
So you have to
they get
assume
know
that
you.
the server's going to be there for a while.
Yeah, well, that's true.
And I would have to ask you this question: how often are you going to this place? Like, are you
Too much.
Are you Norman Cheers, where you're coming in every
Pretty
single
much.
day?
Pretty much. Yeah, pretty much. It's that's a whole nother story, and it's not my story. We're talking about hot takes from Jim Baker. So let's move on.
So
And
to your point, though, I don't know what the solution is, other than
I don't either.
I guess if we're gonna, reduce the stress of a hot take when it comes to waiting for the check, then simply just ask for the check when the food comes, I guess.
that's what I've been doing. Now, see, I'm used to the good stuff, Jim brings in the delicious tea that helps my health and serves it to me. Now, I'm not sure. I'm sitting. Do I have to tip you when I leave?
You do not.
Oh, thank you. Another one of your hot takes, and this one has affected me personally, and that is noise pollution. And I'm wondering what your take is on that.
Yeah, so my kids will tell me my hearing isn't that great anymore. Another criticism. But I've been noticed, like, everywhere you go, there's noise.
Oh, yeah.
Except for the studio right now. But if you go to Starbucks, for example, music's always in the background. It's always loud.
Yes.
Chairs are squeaking against the floor. If you're outside, eating, there's always a guy cutting the grass or blowing the
Boombox playing.
sidewalks.
Yeah.
If you're, and inevitably, it seems like some of these motorcycles and cars, have the souped up, mufflers in the back
Yes.
that don't modify the noise. They actually increase it. And where I live, we're within the flight path of the airport. So inevitably, there's always a jet that's either
Sure.
landing or flying over us, taking off rather. And so I'm like, I think our whole society is consumed with noise at this point in time.
I don't think people really fully, and I don't either. I have never been in this room's very quiet, but I can still hear background noise, in a truly quiet environment. And I don't know if people have said this about when you purchased your home and the flight path, you'll get used to it. And you do, though. You do kind of, the highway's nearby, and you absorb it and you don't care about it. But I don't know what it's like to be in a quiet, silence-free environment. Do you? What must
Not
that
really,
be like?
no. I think with this work from home and this mobile society now, I mean,
Yeah.
you are going to be in some places where you need to take a business call, for example.
Right.
And I mean, it seems like every time I would start one in a public place, suddenly the noise would increase by 15-fold, and you're hitting the mute button. You're trying to go to a quiet area, which is no such thing. Then you go out into the street, and then suddenly, somebody's coming down the street, and obviously it's rude for the recipient on the call, but you just start thinking to yourself, man, this is a very noisy country. So then I did some research, and I guess Congress about 40 years ago, took up the Noise Reduction Act. I don't think anything was ever passed, but it basically said that anything over 85 decibels is harmful to your hearing, increases stress, and potentially could be physically harmful to your cardio health. So to give you an example of 85 decibels, car horns, obviously those mufflers, just general car traffic
Yes.
that's moving. You're looking at hair dryers. You're looking at just typical noise in restaurants. Sirens obviously would be louder. Music, obviously concerts are in the 100 plus decibel range. So, I mean, there's a lot of things just in our day-to-day life that are over the limit that Congress had set.
In fact, I've noticed that, and I don't know if you've noticed this, that emergency vehicles have a tough time moving through traffic. And I think it's because it's tough to break through all that noise.
Sure.
But you're right about the physical aspects and even the mental aspects. What are your thoughts on that? I mean, you mentioned cardio. I'm assuming you're talking heart and that kind of thing. I mean, can it give you a heart attack?
Research I read didn't go that far, but it did say that it can lead to, because obviously it increases your stress.
Yes.
And then if you're not used to, the unpredictable noise based on your health, I mean, that could, create a cortisol moment, and that could set your body out of balance, and potentially you could have a heart attack. I don't know. The other thing too, if you don't really care about the human aspect of it, but you're a wildlife lover,
Yes.
they've done studies where birds they find their mate through communication. through noise. And so if the noise is being drowned out by other noise, they're not going to find the mate. They're going to miss the boat, and therefore they're not going to be able to procreate as fast. So they've noticed that there's been less and less chicks born in certain areas due to the noise level.
Well, that would make sense. I mean, it impacts humans. It's got to impact the animal life as well.
And, nothing against whales. I think they're phenomenal mammals, but some people think that they're the most intelligent mammal on Earth. A lot of noise in the ocean itself. You get ships, submarines. You
You got the wind turbines now that are also causing some issues.
Who knows? There's other underground technology that's underneath
Yes.
the ocean as well, and that's had an effect on calving as well.
So I guess I would ask the obvious question, what are the solutions other than putting on some silencing headphones?
Yeah, so the EU, they've passed laws where they are forcing communities, and I'm not sure, having government intervene is always the best idea, but they've forced communities to, reduce noise pollution by 30%. So there's quiet areas, for example, in public school, within public places, within, certain towns and municipalities and what have you. They regulated, I don't think they have those loud mufflers over there. And I know they've done a lot, both the U.S. and Europe have done a lot to try to reduce jet engine noise, with the newer technology. But the problem with our carriers is that they all use, 1970 planes still.
Yes.
But if you go overseas, you're flying in a 2000 to 2020 plane. Like the equipment's totally different over there than it is here.
Did not know that.
Oh, yeah. I was in Africa last year.
Yes.
We got on one of those Airbus 350s, which is a new plane that was designed and, I guess went into public back in like 2015, 2016. I mean, it's phenomenal. It's gigantic. It's clean. It's quiet. It's just amazing. And over here, we're still rolling around in 757s and 767s, and they're just loud, old, banged up planes.
Kind of feel like Cuba all of a sudden with all the 57 Chevys. We should do better than that. We're America. We should have the new planes.
I mean, even the electric cars make noise, and I think by
Yes.
law they have to, because
Yes.
otherwise you wouldn't hear them. But, you might be able to tone it down a little bit.
I was reading a little bit about that. And yes, electric cars, there's been a study, and they are more people are being hit by electric cars because they just simply don't hear them. But that was also a solution that was being offered. That, if you went more with electric, obviously, you wouldn't have the vroom vroom noise. But it is, and I have hearing aids for that precise reason because of the loud noises I experienced in different environments. Some of it my own fault, some of it not my own fault, but it can impact your life in a big way.
Yeah, and the thing about the whole loud truck car thing is I just don't understand what the purpose is.
Jim, I don't know if that's our age. I'm older than you, but I turn to my little 8-year-old and I say, I wish I had a car that sounded like that, with great sarcasm. And now she's old enough to understand sarcasm. But at the time when I was, 16, getting my first car, I don't know there was something about a loud muffler. I don't know what it is, but there was something about it.
So people would look at you?
I don't know.
Was there like a comfort, like misogynist feeling in the car with the muffler vibrations? Like what was going on?
Oh, heavy into puberty at that time. I don't fully understand anything I did at that time. But no, I'm with you on that. I am absolutely with you on it. Have you noticed how hot it is? Do you think it's, Jim, do you think it has anything to do, any of this global warming stuff might be true and stuff? I mean,
It's June.
you mean this comes around once a year? Or
So
something like that? What are you trying to say?
it's funny you mentioned that. I don't know what I was doing a couple weeks ago, and maybe it was last week. And you know how when you log on, sometimes whatever your browser is, they give you like a quick news feed.
Mm-hmm.
And I saw a little news feed of the governor of New York, and she was having, an emergency YouTube session, basically
Yes.
talking about, and she had the heat map of New York.
Yeah.
This was last Monday, actually, and she had the heat map in New York behind her, and she was talking about how the state's prepared, and if you need help, the state's going to get there for you, and this heat is unprecedented, especially in northern communities of the state, not necessarily New York City per se.
Right.
And it's an unusual event. It's got nothing to do with just traditional summertime heat. She was intimating that it's man-caused,
Yes.
and Buffalo's not used to it, Syracuse, et cetera, et cetera. New York City is not used to it, but we're there. Now her approval rating is 34%. So I think
Yes.
maybe that's what compelled her to get on TV. But there was couple hot takes going on, and we'll certainly talk about the heat piece of it. But the other hot take is, I think government feels like they're forced to always have to say something or do something to make the citizenry feel safe, because our citizenry isn't used to, some of them aren't used to being able to take care of themselves, not the ones that are unhealthy, are disabled, but just in general, people, just have to look for help, where the majority of, especially in the city, every building is air conditioned for the most part. And it's kind of like when it's cold, you stay inside.
Yes.
And when it's warm,
Wait a second.
you stay inside.
You're trying to throw common sense my way now? But no, that's a very, very excellent point. That's the reason they put the sign at the corners in New York where it says, look up from your phone when you cross the street.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm serious. It's a serious warning.
Here's a hot take on some 50 Cups tea.
Our detox tea detoxes your body through its carefully crafted ingredients. It contains ginger, which detoxes the body of intestinal gases and cramping, nettle leaf, which stimulates kidney function to eliminate toxins from the body, dandelion root, which stimulates the detox of the kidneys and liver as well as better digestion, burdock root, which purifies blood from heavy metals, milk thistle, which helps to stop liver damage, lemongrass, which soothes the stomach, cinnamon bark, which regulates blood sugar levels, lemon myrtle, which speeds up the breakdown of food, and dried lemon, which helps to protect your liver function.
Visit 50cupstea.com to find out more.
So anyhow, I did some research.
Yes. Tell me the research.
Yes. So I looked at New York City first.
Yes.
And just basically looked at June temperatures, average temperatures for the last 4 years.
All right.
All right. So June of 1984, the temperature was 74.5. That was the average temperature in June in
All right.
1984. Right.
Right.
40 years earlier. June of 23, it was 70. June of 22 was 71.4. And June of 21, 74.3. So almost to the 84 year temperatures.
Sure.
This year, data's not totally in yet, but you're looking somewhere around those numbers again. So historically, it was hotter in other years than it has been recently, especially last week. And I'm thinking to myself, back in 1984, when I think Mario Cuomo was the governor of New York, would he have gone on TV to tell everybody how hot it's going to be and that we're here to help you?
No, I think they treated their constituency with maybe a little more respect. They expected more out of them. I remember though, Jim, and it usually happened in Europe where you'd have this heat wave hit and you would have people die. And this was like in the 70s and 80s. And I don't know if you recall that. And every now and then they get the fan out campaign in some of the cities. So I guess when I see a governor come on television and express this concern, it's in a sense, that's unprecedented because, as you're saying, this really hasn't happened until now. So my question to you is it because it's a real concern for the populace, or is there something else going on here, some kind of political agenda that's trying to be substantiated?
Well, I think doing some research, and again, I'm not trying to make this into a political discussion, but I do think because her numbers are down so low, she probably feels compelled that she has to do something, right?
Right.
But I think also, having listened to a lot of this, her broadcast, she obviously talked a lot about the heat, but she intimated that this wasn't a natural weather-related heat wave.
I think that was actually what she said, right, in her warning, an unnatural heat event.
Correct.
Yes.
Correct. But then I'm looking at the data, and there was so let me go back to 1984 again. The highest temperature in June was 96 degrees. Excuse me. The highest temperature was 96 degrees. Wow. In 23 in June, it was 84. In 22, it was 87. And in 21, it was 98. So I guess in 84, there was a lot of unnatural heat events going on at that point in time. I get obviously hot taked, frustrated when people just come out and start scaring us, when in reality, if you look back at the data over the last 30 to 40 years, this is just another warm June compared to some of the other years that it was warm.
Well, and it's so true. And there's obviously, when there is heat like this, if you are concerned, there are things you can do. And nowadays, Jim, there's really almost, as you pointed out, anywhere you can go to escape the heat. But I saw a news piece where they were highlighting the unprecedented heat, and the unprecedented cost of cooling your home broke records. And then they blamed it on climate change, but certainly there are lots of variables that would affect the cost of things like that. But your underlying point is there's this, can I call it fear-mongering? It almost feels that way. They want to get people afraid, and I don't know if it's for an agenda or if it's because you need me kind of, without me, you're not going to survive. I don't know what it is, but it continues, and I've never seen anything quite like it. It seems to be getting worse.
Well, yeah, we'll put most of the onus on the policies that have been delivered, to the populace, mostly by unelected officials. Just the elected officials are the ones that are going to either have to sell it, or they're the ones who, ultimately have to sign off on it. But yeah, I think we live in a state of fear all the time. I think no matter what it is, and this week just happens to be the weather. And just for additional information, instead of just looking at New York City, I decided I'd go further north and look at Buffalo.
Oh, man. So that's where all the snow is, Jim. It never gets warm up there.
Never.
What did you find?
So I found that it is unusual for it to spike over 90 degrees. Mm-hmm. But this month, there's just 2 days that it was in the 90s, and that was last Wednesday and Thursday. The rest of the time, it's been in the 80s and 70s. And usually this time of year, the average temperatures, are somewhere in the high 70s to low 80s.
Right.
So yeah, 2 days of over 90, but that doesn't mean it never happened before. It has happened in multiple years as well.
Right.
Similar to New York City, whenever New York was hot, usually Buffalo was hot as well.
Right.
So yes, it happens. It happens all the time. There's nothing new. But you would never know that based on the state of fear, that we constantly live in this country at this point in time. And I think the only thing I can think of is the agenda at the end of the day is not to, make you self-reliant and make you just go fix it yourself, but is to be dependent on the folks in government so they can, I don't know, get votes, tax you more. I don't know what it is. But it's frustrating because I think it's more frustrating that people just don't look this stuff up. They just believe, what somebody's telling them.
Well, and, I'm curious, where do you even go? Nowadays, it's become harder and harder. If you're somebody like yourself, and really everybody should do this, is when you see something like this, is it really true? Do you Google it? What do you do? And you've seen where the platforms themselves have been impacted, and they're beginning to edit what comes up to the top. So it's hard to do, but a lot of this is common sense too. You have life experiences, for goodness sakes. I do. It's always been hot in summer, and there's always been heat waves, and it's always been very cold in winter, and there have been extreme colds. It just seems natural to me. So, okay. I'm looking for you to come give me the golden answer. This is what we need to do, but there really isn't one, is there?
Just so you know, the high temperature in Buffalo today is going to be 79.
So that's beautiful. That's a perfect temperature.
And not to focus on New York, but because she had come out and made that statement, I thought that'd be just something that just reinforced my hot take.
Good for you.
The solution is just to be aware of what is really going on. And the good news is, whether it's Google, DuckDuckGo, Edge, you can get the data, and you can look back. And if you truly believe, the Earth is melting, then if I were you, I wouldn't just assume that we're going to, all be in the ocean in 10 years. I would go back and look. And if the governments and everybody else thought we truly were going to be, going underwater at some point in time because the sea levels are rising, then why do we continue building coastal communities? Why do we continue taking more land in cities to expand them into the water? I mean, it doesn't make any sense. So
no, you're right. You're right about that. I saw a piece from Dan Rather. You remember that reputable CBS reporter?
Yes.
He actually had a piece from 42 years ago, and he was proclaiming at that point that scientists have confirmed global warming. And they showed a map of Florida and that the sea rise was so incredible that Florida would be 25% gone. Well, that was 42 years ago, and Florida hasn't changed at all. And this is, I only bring this up, is your own eyes, your own life experiences, and you brought this up last podcast about just common sense. Taking a moment and believing your own eyes, your own ears, and you've got a God-given brain. You ought to be able to connect the dots, don't you think?
I do. And I had to laugh too, because I think she did recommend that stay indoors and, make sure you stay within in an air-conditioned environment, keep the temperature at 78 so you're not burning excess energy. Then I thought, well, aren't you part of the same group of lawmakers that decided to put through the Green Deal, new environmental laws in place for HVAC? So if your outdoor air conditioner breaks, you can probably replace that now for $4,000 to $7,000, depending on how big it is. Next year, double the price, because you have to change all the internal venting, ductwork, et cetera, et cetera. So I'm thinking to myself, well, how does that help the person that can't afford a new air conditioner down the road?
Well, I think that's a legitimate point. And with your research that you've done, it doesn't seem there's really a need to jump through all those hoops. I've often wondered, if you're going to spend trillions of dollars on whatever it is that we've decided to do with global warming, or why not build infrastructure, rather than eliminating things that actually benefit people. But I guess I'm just not smart enough, Jim. I'm just not.
I think I read a month or so ago that they're predicting another record hurricane landfall year. Now, every year they predict the same thing, and every year, for the most part, it doesn't happen, right?
Yes.
So, because of course the temperatures are warming in the ocean, or they blame El Nino or El Nina. Like there's always something, And I'm thinking, why can't we just be normal? Like, this is the weather. We have to deal with it.
I love the new terminology they've come up with for all these things that we've experienced in our lifetime. And I'm trying to think off the top of my head, but a very cold, what is it? The polar, whatever
the polar vortex.
The polar vortex, rather than a cold front from the Arctic Circle. So they've come up with all of these just very descriptive, scary terms to basically describe something that has happened and will continue to happen.
Well, not only that, I mean, common sense, right? So the polar vortex comes down to North Carolina.
Yes.
They tell you, hey, usually the jet stream goes across Canada in the northern part of the country in the wintertime.
Yes.
Well, now it's going to come down a little bit further. And I'm thinking, well, all the people in Minnesota and in Canada, they're all alive, and they deal with the vortex every single day.
Yes.
I think we'll be okay down here because we're all living in houses just like they have houses up north. We have heat, they have heat. And by the way, our energy is cheaper. And we'll survive the 3 or 4 days of the polar vortex.
I don't know. I went immediately to the governor's channel. I didn't know what to do, Jim. I didn't know what to do. Thought, should I put a coat on or not put a coat? So I'm teasing a bit, but in any case, all of these hot takes impact your life. They really do. This one particularly, I think, impacts us in so many different ways, from freedoms to actual dollars that are being spent that would be better spent from your family. That I just wish we had a magic wand to say, let's go back maybe 50 years or so, when people kind of used their common sense and seemed to have more independence. I don't know what it is.
So in 1955 in New York.
Oh, you got another stat?
Yeah, the average temperature that year was, almost as high as it was in 1984, like 84 point whatever.
Holy cow.
Well, back then there was no AC.
No, I know.
For the most part.
I know.
Like, how about those guys back then? I mean, they dealt with it though. My mom was 17 years old. My dad was 20.
Yeah.
They lived in New York. I don't think growing up they ever told me about how hot it was in 1955. It's just part of life.
My dad's bedroom was out on the porch in the wintertime in Wisconsin, and he was in charge of getting the coal to put in there. And Jim, I don't want to shock you, but Andy Griffith had a show about North Carolina. He and Opie. Oh, yeah. He and Opie and Gomer and all those folks get damn hot in North Carolina. And I never once, except they may have gone to the theater once for that AC they were talking about, but they sat on the front porch and played guitar. there's no question, it would seem to me, that all the things that these people are trying to ban or make more difficult for people to use are the very things that save people's lives. You know, air conditioning, you know, the heater, the furnace and that. People live a lot, are safer today with our environment than if we were to allow what they're proposing to continue. So,
Right, but with their assault on fossil fuels that fuel the power plants,
Yeah.
you know, we could turn into, especially on the East Coast, you could turn into California someday where they have to have rolling brownouts every once in a while when it gets hot because they buy their energy elsewhere because they won't.
Yes.
There's too many environmental controls on the power plants. So,
Yes.
but we have this stuff, right? And it's just we can go on and on. We could spiral forever. But at the end of
Yes.
the day, in the summertime, it's going to be warm. In wintertime, it's going to be cold. It's going to be wet. You know, we haven't had rain in North Carolina for, I think, 20 days, and it's pretty dry out there.
Yes.
But I can assure you the rain's going to come at some point in time, and it always does. And for those that want to look it up, I think North Carolina is the second most porous state, so we have the most water, fresh water, other than Minnesota in the country. So
I did not know
swamplands,
that.
lakes, ponds, things like that. So I think we'll be okay.
You know, we should do a podcast on Jim's fun facts because I did not know that. No, I mean, I did not know that. Let's end on something good.
Yeah, let's go to a warm take, not a hot take.
Yeah.
So, as I told you earlier, I believe we are more united than we are divided. And if you drink our tea, you'll really be united. I truly believe that. And I think we've been sold a bill of goods by our media, politicians, because I think fear, obviously, at the end of the day, and anger drives people more than happiness does, or in the short term, not in the long term. So, I came back from Colorado late on Wednesday. I was in the Denver airport, and I noticed a woman who was in a motorized scooter. She was older. Clearly, she had some health issues, but she was holding a rollerboard because she didn't want to check her bag. And at first I'm like, why wouldn't you just check that bag? And then I thought, you know what? Good for you. You know, if you can handle this thing, this is great.
Yeah.
So anyhow, she ends up getting on the plane before me, and she's scootering down the jetway, you know, with the rollerboard. She's holding the rollerboard, and she's got like a basket with stuff in it and everything else. And I was maybe 7 or 8 people behind her, and she, you know, where people have to put their strollers and all that stuff so the people from down below can get the stuff and stick it underneath the plane. So she basically parks a scooter there, and she's struggling at this point in time to get this bag. So there's a woman that's next to her and says, "Hey, can I help you?" She goes, "Yeah, that'd be great." And she said, "Let me take your bag." She goes, "What seat are you in?" She goes, "I'm in 7A. So this woman basically takes, the bag was big, by the way. It was like a piano case, but she takes the bag and sticks it up there for her. And woman safely gets on the plane and so on and so forth. And I thought, that's a very nice act of kindness.
It is.
Right? And just reinforces the fact that, you know, not everybody's crazy in this country. So fast forward to the next morning after I get back, I'm debating, should I just go for a walk this morning, 5:30 in the morning, or should I go for a run? Didn't really feel like running because it's kind of warm. And or should I ride my bike? So I opted to ride my bike. So I don't really like to ride on the roads anymore because people like to text when they're driving and do all the, probably, you know, do makeup, do whatever in their car instead of driving. So I get on a trail, which eventually, it's a greenway that eventually leads me to Umstead and the state park in Raleigh. And so I'm riding and I'm going over a bridge and I'm about to take a left onto another trail, and I'm leaving the sun to go in the shade. So it's around 6:30 in the morning, and I look both ways. I didn't see anybody. And as I'm turning, I see this biker coming right at me. He's trying to take a right while I'm taking a left. Fairness to him, he's on the right side of the path, and I'm on the middle side of the path. I should have been on the right side of I tried to cut the corner. And I paid for that mistake because the next thing I know, I'm going over the handlebars.
Oh.
And then within nanoseconds, I'm thinking, okay, don't hit your head. Thankfully, I landed on my hands, so I'm a little banged up still. I landed on my hands, and then the handlebars hit my ribs, and then my ankle got stuck in the bar of the bike, but the bike did not flip over me, thankfully. So this person who I almost hit, thankfully I didn't hit, he obviously comes to my aid. He asked me if I'm okay, and thinking, well, I have this really thin skid, so I think I'm going to be a bloody pulp.
Yes.
And I'm looking around, I'm like, wow, I kind of lucked out. There's not much blood. And then my head at least, I don't have any aches and pains. It doesn't look like I broke anything or bruised anything. So other than my ribs being hurt and my hand hurting. And so I get up and, he's like, are you all right? And I said, yeah, I'm good. And because I just want to get back on the bike and finish. I got a little further to go before I turn around. Let's get some water, he says. And I'm thinking to myself, what's with water? Every time somebody gets hurt, you have to have water.
Some water.
Yeah, so maybe they're checking to see if you can swallow. I don't know. So anyhow, I'm like, no, I'm good. And he was like, no, come on, let's get some water. So that just happened to be a water fountain, maybe 20 yards down this path that I was trying to get on. So we go over to the water fountain, and he goes, you mind if I touch you? And I said, sure. And so he starts fidgeting with my shoulders and massaging me because I landed on my shoulder. He goes, are you okay? And I said, yeah, I'm fine. And meanwhile, I'm proving to him that I can drink water. And so I sipped some water out of his water fountain. And so I looked at him, I said, are you a doctor? And he says, no. He says, I'm just, want to make sure you're okay. And he goes, but I'll give you a tip. I said, what? He goes, do you take turmeric? And I said, or turmeric. And I call it turmeric. And he said, I said, I take a capsule a day. It's an anti-inflammatory, but it's a natural thing. And he's like, well, here's what I want you to do. Get some milk. You boil up that milk. Take a tablespoon of turmeric a day for the next 3 days. You mix it up. You drink it, which in our tea world, when we had the retail shop, without the tea, that's basically called a golden milk latte.
Okay.
And we had a customer come in one day, and she ordered the golden milk latte to go. And she said her husband had it a couple weeks earlier, and it cured his rheumatoid arthritis.
Oh, my.
No idea if that's true or not, but she seemed to think it did, and therefore she would come in on a regular basis to get that golden milk latte. So I do know there's benefits to turmeric because that's what's in the golden milk latte.
Okay.
So anyhow, I'm like, all right, cool. I'll take your advice. And I said, thank you for helping me. He said, glad you're okay. And he took off, and then I took off, and then I thought I would see him on the way back because I thought he would do the turnaround basically where I started, and I never saw him. So I thought to myself, wow, this is a figment of my imagination. This actually happened, or maybe this person, I'm sure he just turned off the trail at some point in time. But as I was riding back, I really was reinvigorated by the kindness, of our society. He did not have to do what he did. He could have easily helped me up, and because he's got a workout to do, and said, okay, cool, you're good. I'll see you. Sorry it happened.
Watch where you're going next time.
Yeah, it's exactly. It was my fault. And but he took time out, for 5 or 6 minutes to give me a recipe, by the way, which I tried. And by the way, it does work. It's a little, if you need some GI cleansing, it's also very good as well. So be careful about how much you put in. But it was a great tip. And every time I see turmeric every day, basically, and every time I do, I will be thinking of him. He's just a genuinely nice person who took time out of his day to see if I was okay. And so that just reinforced the fact that as you're going through society, whether you're still waiting for the check in the restaurant or you're, just living day to day, we're not fighting with each other. We're not screaming and yelling at each other. We're getting along. We're helping each other. A lot of us get paid for it. But nonetheless, we're still a very kind society. And that is my warm take for today.
I like that. I saw an accident before my eyes on I-40 just a few days ago, and it was close enough that I stopped, but so did everybody else. And everybody else ran to the guy to just reinforce what you just said, that, I don't know who they vote for. They don't. And I don't think people care. We're all kind of in this together, all trying to accomplish the same thing. So, more of that kind of thing, I think, is kind of a nice way to end this podcast. But if people got more of that, their view of the world and where we are might change too.
Yeah, I think weirdly too, it's, we've been conditioned to just mind your own business because maybe that person who you think you're trying to help will get the wrong attention from you. Mm-hmm. And I would just encourage you, if you truly see somebody that's disabled on the road or, wrecking a bike or, looks like they're in distress, and just go up and try to help them. Yeah,
I love that, Jim. That's great. It's a great way to end the podcast. Now, the tea is delicious as well. I wanted to comment on that. I'm not going to get sick for what? 6 months? 10 months? It does help, though, the immune system, this particular tea. How do people get a list of the teas that you offer and the benefits that they derive from?
Easy. Just go to the website, and we have a bunch of content, that's out there through our blog area, and we have other content around the teas, and we'll tell you what the recipes are and what the benefits are, for those teas. And we really have 4 classic flavors, which are our herbal teas with health benefits in each category. And then we have our 4 healthy blend teas. Then we have our 2 classic blends, which are the traditional Earl Grey and the English breakfast. And believe it or not, there's a lot of health benefits of black teas, especially around the cardiology area, English breakfast in particular. So maybe that's why the people in the UK and India don't have better hearts than we do in the US, because they drink black tea a lot. But yeah, website, 50cupstea.com and 50cupstea.com. And, until next time, thanks for having me.
Yeah, this was delicious. I can't wait for the next cup when we meet again. Thank you all for joining us.
Thanks for joining us on Hot Takes 50 Cups. If you enjoyed today's episode, be sure to visit our website at 50cupstea.com for more great content and delicious organic teas, and listen and watch us on all the leading platforms. Stay connected with us on Instagram at 50cupstea, YouTube, and TikTok. And don't forget to subscribe, leave a review, and share with your friends. Until next time, keep sipping and stay united.